Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are, of course, your multi-award winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast. We're back as Javi ignites the Spurs comeback. If you were the first time, you can find us on iTunes, we're on Spotify, we're across all major audio platforms, and we are here to give you the reaction, the reflection on Spurs going up to the Amex and coming away with a point. It is quite literally, simply, an international crossover Tottenham podcast. Alongside me, I've got the wonderful Mars over at the Spurs Kings. I've got the doctor of the Tottenham community, Vass Koni from Doctor Tottenham. I've got Jim over at OSO Spurs. It's going to be a very calm, composed look back at how Spurs got back in the game at the Amex. And like I say, from 2-0 down after 31 minutes, Spurs did well to rescue a point against Brighton. Great spirit from Spurs to come from behind to rescue that point. Xavi Simmons take a bow. He came on, changed the game and helped Spurs get a deserved point. Before we bring in this wonderful panel, let's take you through the match facts and the stats at Spurs up at the Amex. It finished Brighton 2, Tottenham 2. Brighton 12 shots to Spurs 11. 4 shots from Brighton to Spurs is 3. Clearance-wise, a lot of clearance in this game for Brighton. Brighton 39 clearances to Spurs is 15. Recovery Spurs 64 to Brighton's 52. Tottenham, the busier of the two sides, just in attacking department, 27 to 25. Spurs spending a lot more time in Brighton's opposition box, 44 touches to Brighton's 17. Dominating the corner count again, Tottenham, 10 to 2. Also dominating the possession stat, 64 to 36. And XG, Brighton just slightly edging that one, 1.41 to 1.40. I have to make an admission to you guys and girls at the start of this show. I am suffering a little bit of man flu, so I'm off kilter or off balance. Please do forgive me. I know you wonderful people won't hold much against me. I know you won't. But look, let's steer over to Marlon to start and kick us off on this edition of Last Word on Spurs. Before we start, guys, we can ask you if you can to like and subscribe to obviously Last Word on Spurs and all the wonderful people on this panel. Marlon at Spurs Kings TV, Jim at Oso Spurs, and Vass, of course, also over at Doctor Tottenham Podcast. Mars, love to see you back alongside us. First game after a Champions League match.
Yep.
We're 2-0 down against a team that we lost away to both of the last 2 league seasons in Brighton. And in addition, a side that have only just lost one of their last 10 Premier League home matches. 1-6 drawn 3. I think you have to go back to the defeat of Villa 3-0 last season to show you a side that really is a very good home side. So how much credit do we give to the team, to Thomas Frank of turning that game round? And obviously Xavi rightly will probably steal the headlines for the way he impacted the game in that number 10 position. Give us your thought, Miles, on that game and that result.
No, it was... Look, the fight back was brilliant to see. I'm not going to deny that. It was a bit... you get to a point in the game where you were like, how is this going to turn out? And, the first half an hour didn't do us any favours. However, I look at it and go, you can tell the team are playing for Frank. They're starting to slowly just get to the hang of the way he wants to play. Defensively today, we just looked a bit shaky in that first half an hour. Because you saw the XG there. We had all the possession, but the XG was exactly the same. We're just not creating enough at the other end of the pitch, and we just don't seem to be... It just seems to be a bit disjointed at the moment. And I think that's the bit that we're looking at, because we have to take Tuesday in consideration and you have to take today into consideration. We just wasn't creating much until probably when Javi actually came on. And that's probably been the biggest worry with people. Like, there's no cohesion at the moment, and it seems to be a bit here, there, and everywhere. However, I think a lot of us will look at that and go, that was a point gained, considering how we did start. And I looked at it and went, okay, there's so many things I could take away from this game, and Frank will as well. And I think there's a lot that he still needs to fix and just adjust. But I think he's learned. For me, I think he's still learning the squad. And I think what's going to be key over the next couple of weeks is, because all I'm going to say is by the time we get to November, he just needs to make sure he's got it sorted. And for me, I know Richarlison scored today, but he caused a lot of problems for us up front. It just wasn't sticking. He weren't holding it up well. His off the ball play wasn't as great as it usually is. So, but everything else, like Odebear as well, was a bit quiet, but what can you do about that? But everything else, apart from that, went really well. And I think our midfield was just a bit, in that first half, was a bit all over the place. But what I really really wanted to bring up is I thought Van de Ven looked really out of place in the game today. He just wasn't in the right positions, which is usually very unlike him. Because going back to the first goal they scored, I know we'll talk about it later, he was just caught in no man's land, and he didn't even. Usually he's sprinting back on those bars, but he just seemed to be a bit off it. So I don't know if he's starting to come into that part of the season where he might need a rest ready. But apart from that, yeah, look, I take it. I'm not going to sit here and say it was completely horrific, because there was good bits, there were bad bits. It was it reminded me of a typical Spurs performance. It just had everything.
I mean, for me, when you consider, can I say this coming over to you, Vass, the fact that we played in midweek in the Champions League, I know, again, it wasn't an away game, it was a home game, but I think I said this on our last show, it's going to be very interesting to see how Frank is going to transition from having to go to 2 games a week, and maybe at some points, maybe even 3 games when you have Carabao Cup involvement in there, FA Cup as well. I thought the draw was good considering the mess of the first 40 minutes. And when you think about the fact we lost both home and away meetings in the top flight season to Brighton last season, considering 7 goals in the process. So in terms of the result and the nature and the resilience shown, which is what Frank keeps referring to in a lot of the post-match games, he's seeing a real resilience about this Spurs side. I know when we go back to last season, I don't like comparing too much to last season, but that's probably a game Tottenham would have lost. So your thoughts on that performance and that comeback from Spurs, inspired by, of course, Xavi Simmons?
I thought today was probably our best performance of the season, holistically. And you've got to forgive me, because I'm going to be about as much use as a chocolate teapot. For the first 25 minutes, I couldn't get my stream to work. So I missed their first goal, though I did see it.
That might not be, I mean, we did start quite well, but that might not be a bad thing that you didn't see the first 25 minutes.
Yeah. But listen, I think a lot of Spurs fans are almost half expecting Frank's team to be playing, fluid football already, when that's not going to happen. In any season, you need about 10 Premier League games to find your feet. And in this season, we've got a new manager and a fair few new players. So it's going to take a little time. And you've got to be realistic as well. I mean, last season, we lost 22 games. We conceded so many goals. I don't even remember how many goals we conceded. So it stands to reason that one of the first things that Frank has got to address is making us defensively solid, right? Concede fewer goals, and then that way you give yourself a chance to win a game. And that's what's been happening this season. Of course, the other night against Villarreal wasn't ideal. Spurs fans turn up expecting to see some attacking football. We didn't get it. Villarreal, damn good team, by the way. Let's not discount that. So it's going to take time, and I think, we talk about attacking play. There's no Maddison anymore. There's no Kulusevski. There's no Solanke. We're kind of finding our feet, and I think we're doing that gradually under Frank. And I saw very good signs today, is all I'm saying. I think we're trending in the right direction. Yep. And Spurs fans should be positive after that performance today.
Yeah, I agree with Vass on a lot of the points you've made there. And I think, again, I said this in the last couple of shows, that to expect the manager to have all the answers after 7 competitive games, I just don't think it happens at any type of football. I think it's just the world we live in now, Jim Coventry. I think in 2025, there's almost this kind of nature where people expect the manager to have all the answers so early on. And don't get me wrong, I've said in the last couple of home games, we don't want to be, facing 20, 25 shots a game. We just know we can't do that. So, I mean, at the same time, Frank has acknowledged that the attacking element will come. But I think the great thing about this game was that many wanted to see what a Tottenham side would be like when they go behind and how they react. And I think what's key is that to go against a team like Brighton, to go behind there like we have gone behind there, like we saw a couple of seasons, obviously in a row there to some degree, and to come back and show the resilience to fight back and get a point, I think that's a very, very good sign. I think, again, just to let everyone know out there, Brighton were undefeated versus the top 6 teams at home since the start of last season. So you can't get away from that. They're a good side, Brighton. Like I said, they've had 1 defeat in 10 at home. And I think the first half show, we looked like we're a side played midweek in Europe. And to be fair to Xavi, came on, changed the game. What were your main takeaways, Jim, from that performance, that result for you up at the Amex?
Yeah, I think that stat sums it up pretty nicely. It's 8 games since the start of last season they played against the big 6, if you inverted commas, and they've drawn 2 and won 6, and one of those draws was against us today. So, they had a pretty impeccable record up until then. They're a squad that's very much advanced into a secure ownership model and transfer strategy. So they're just, they're at a very mature phase of where they are as a club. They know how to play. They know how the manager wants them to play. They're just in a much more mature phase of their kind of period and whatever you want to call it. Yeah. But whereas we are right at the infancy of ours with Frank, right? And I think you can't deny what good improvements he's made very quickly to set piece structures. I know today we didn't defend particularly well with those 2 errors, you could say, that came through. But overall, you have to say, when you look at a game, for 80 minutes of the 90, we look a lot more sound and secure than we did last season. And it's reassuring to see that. And what I've liked is that it feels like every week, the challenges around the offensive structures, the attacking plays that have kind of taken a little bit longer to get going, that's completely normal. That takes a long time for a coach to embed into a group of players. When they're set up against world-class players on the opposition, they've got to try and break them down. It takes a lot of coaching, a lot of patience, and a lot of the players on today's pitch have only been at Spurs for 3 games. So Frank's barely had a minute with them. There's been international breaks in the way and all sorts. He's already lost Muani to injury. Kulusevski's out. He doesn't have a Basuma available, even though he probably wouldn't be using him, to be fair. But there's already a mini injury crisis going on at Spurs. We've got the second most injuries in the league already. And I don't go into games thinking, oh no, we're doomed. We're missing Solanke as well and all these players. I think, actually, you know what? We've got a good squad and we've got a manager who will find a way of putting a competitive side out regardless, even if we are missing 4 or 5 key players. And he's done that really well. And like you say, even when you look at like Liverpool over the weekend, they only scraped to win 2-1 at home against Everton. It's pretty normal on weekends for most sides to find their games difficult, even the best sides to find their Premier League games very difficult. And to go to Brighton and get a point, I think we've done really well. We looked almost dead and buried when it went 2-0 down, felt very deflated. But let's not as well discount how hard it must be to motivate the players to go out and go fight back for that 2-2 draw.
Yeah.
And look, the final reassuring thing, I think, is all the players that we've bought over the last summer, so far, the ones that we've seen have looked like very good signings.
Agreed.
And Simmons looks just... when we signed Van der Vaart, that one always sticks in my head for me when we signed him, because when he came on for his debut, I just thought, oh my gosh, you just got this touch that I just see your levels above what we normally sign.
Yeah.
And he just has that. You're just like, how are you doing that? These one-touch flicks and passes and his vision and his just arrogant strut. I'm just like, God, we've needed this in that midfield. So, I'm really optimistic for the season ahead.
I'm so pleased, Jim, you brought him over to Xavi Simmons. That's where I was going to go to next, Miles, and come to you, because I totally agree with what Jim said there about the level of player that it looks like we've signed. I know it's early days. People say don't get too carried away, but I think he actually dragged us to the Equalizer himself, and I think that's the level of player we have been dying out for. That word game changer sometimes used far too often, but he is such a creative spark. He's a ball carrier, and he has got that mentality about him that you just know is a player that is relentless in his drive, will not give up. I mean, are you quite excited by the impact Xavi Simmons is making so early on in a Spurs shirt, where now obviously many are saying he's got to play a 10 every week? Has he already given that status already here that he's coming and got to be a 10, given that performance there and the way he did ignite the second half? We can't get away from that. He came on and he transformed where that game was going. We've got to be fair and say that.
Yeah, but this comes down to what us Spurs fans have been asking for years when it comes to the transfer policy. Go and sign players that are going to make a big impact on this first 11. And that's exactly what Simmons has done. You could tell from the first minute, and Jim is right, he has got something different to the rest of what we've signed. And actually, when he came on, and this is what I'm talking about when I've always moaned about the starting lineup, actually, the balance of the team became so much more better. And as soon as that 60 minutes came on, we looked like we were going to score. We looked like we were creating stuff. Everyone around him seemed to up their game as well when he came on, because they realized, actually, we've now got someone who's going to take the ball and hold it in that middle of the park. And this is the problem I had against West Ham and what Brighton were doing today. They left such a big hole between their midfield and defence, where he was seeing that pocket. He saw where the danger was. He saw where the gaps were. And it was just like, here we go. We've actually got a clever player here, and he should have probably scored twice in his own defence. And because obviously Kudus, once he had the left back on toast basically in that second half, because for me, Brighton just ran out of steam, and I think that just played right into our hands in that second half. And the subs were made at the right point, and I think that's the most important part of today. Forget who came on or anything. It was just about when he knew what changes he had to make, and he made them at the right time, which for us, we haven't had a manager like that for like a while. So seeing Xavi come on and play in his position, I think we could all clearly see that that's what needed to happen. But the fact he actually went and done it and didn't put him on the left because he thought Udogie might have been struggling a little bit. The fact he went and put him in there, saw how the team was structurally set up, and it just seemed to work. And that was part of the reason why we kept peppering their goal. And look what happens when you put good balls into the box, own goals. So fair play to Frank. Fair play for that sub. Yeah. All of his subs today. I know people are moaning about certain players coming on and stuff, but it made sense. Like Brennan Johnson, for what people want to say about him, because of the chances we were having and we weren't finishing them, which man in this squad is more likely to put it in the back of the net, even if he's not playing well? He
got 18 last season. He got 18 last season.
You can clearly see, and it was look, Brennan Johnson's Brennan Johnson. We know what we're going to get with him, but for me, he made that sub at the right time because he saw we were on top, and he thought if the ball gets in that box and it hits Johnson at the right moment, he'd put it in the back of the net. Didn't happen. But I'm not going to sit here and moan about it because I thought it was a good sub. But I know a lot of people are like, why is he coming on? Why is he doing this? But I just thought Frank, regarding the substitutions today, spot on. I was actually impressed with it. I was really impressed.
I think people know that over the summer, we've had a lot of big Thomas Frank fans come on the show. Johnny, you might be saying that have really been very many behind the fact that Frank is a manager that is known to come and change games. And I think the element is that, to go 2-0 down at a place like Brighton, as I've said more than once already, a place that hasn't really been a happy hunting ground for Spurs in the last 18, 24 months. How are they going to change the game? How are they going to turn this result around in the back of obviously having Europe in midweek and the element of the fact that, again, you've had to, like Jim said, motivate those players there to get them up. I think that's been one of the most pleasing things that I've seen is that there was a real resilience from the players on the field to prove a point that we're not going to be beaten here. We are going to dig in. We are going to fight our way back. And just on Xavi Simmons, it only feels right, Vass, I ask you also about Xavi because, I agree with what Jim said there. I can only go back to a player like Van der Vaart where in his first few games you thought, wow, we've signed someone here that looks like a real potential superstar that can change the flow of a team. I know it's early days with Xavi. Again, he's a young kid. He's obviously having his first season in the Premier League. But just to ask you on that point, it feels that natural position for him looks to be like a number 10. He completely changed everything when he came on. Everything flowed just so much better upon him coming onto the field. His creativity and the attacking threat was really second to none. What was your evaluation of him? Did you expect to have this amount of impact in terms of this game in such a short amount of time, given the fanfare really that was behind him signing for the football club?
Listen, I wanted Xavi Simmons to join us last summer. I stated it on our podcast when we did our summer transfer draft. So I'm really pleased that he's here. I see a lot of people in the comments saying, "No, he has to start. He has to play the 10. He has to, and we got to be a little bit careful because I know you guys have mentioned Van der Vaart as a comp. For me, it's more Modric is the comp of what you can see of the player.
Either all wouldn't be bad.
Sorry?
Either all wouldn't be bad. I'm not knocking Modric.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. But the thing is, even Modric, when he came to the Premier League, he started playing out on the left until he adapted, he got up to speed, he understood the pace of the game. And then when he was ready, he moved more centrally. And that's precisely what Xavi's going to do. As much as we don't want to see him tucked out on the left, he may have to play there initially. And I totally understand why he didn't start today. He's played the last 2 games. Before he came to us, he'd barely played for Leipzig. I mean, they hadn't had much of a season before that anyway. So he's got to get his match fitness up as well. I know some people feel that, he could have been rested on Wednesday against Doncaster, which is fine. But look at the impact he had today coming off the subs bench. So we've got to trust Frank to get this squad selection and squad rotation the way he needs it to be. I have every faith in him getting it right, by the way. So, yeah, I'm totally infused by Xavi. He's an exciting player. He's precisely what we need right now. And he's going to be the creative spark that this team is looking for. That said, excuse me, the players around him need to get used to him, and he needs to get used to the players.
Yep. So true that.
Yeah, so that's going to take a little bit of time as well. And yeah, I've got stuff to say on Richarlison, which I'll probably save for later, because that's a chemistry there that needs to work somehow. And Richie, for all his strong points, has weaknesses that don't quite work when it's not going well for him.
Yep. I think, again, it comes back to that point earlier that I think many looked at this game, Jim, that this was going to be a huge test for Frank, because Spurs, to be fair to them, they've been really, really good when they've taken the lead against other teams. But, on the only other previous occasion when they conceded first, obviously that 1-0 defeat to Bournemouth, they never come close to scoring. So, I mean, just on that point, when it was 2-0, how confident were you, Jim, at that point Spurs would find their way back into a game? Because I think a lot of what I've seen, the commentary really, on the back of a lot of games that we've obviously reviewed on Last One on Spurs, and I'm sure for the same over at Spurs Kings, and of course Doctor Tottenham, and on Also Spurs as well, has probably been, well, hold on a second, we are also giving up a lot of chances. That's been an element of concern. And also the fact of the matter is we haven't really changed the game over yet in terms of reversing the scoreline. So how pleasing was that, Jim, from that perspective of the way the team handled themselves after going 2-0 down?
Yeah, it was. I think the second half of today's game was the first time this season I've seen Spurs start stringing together attacking patterns and open play. And that's not a dig at the progress they made this season. It's just normal that one human being comes in and he's got to go through the whole transfer window, figure out who his squad's going to be staying, going long-term, short-term, who's good at what, analysing all this stuff, then get them into competitive matches, playing every 3 to 4 days. Somehow got to squeeze onto the training pitch in that time enough drills to get them familiar with how he wants his team to attack and set up when going forward. But when he came in, his fundamental was, right, let's do the old tradition. It's not even old. It's just the fundamentals of football is if you can't beat someone, you make sure you don't get beat. You build every great team has a great defense behind it, right? So that's what his focus was. Let's get the defense sorted. Let's get the fundamentals around set pieces all right, and then we'll work on those attacking patterns. And that was the first time I'd seen them get it right. So I wasn't overly confident when we went 2-0 down. I thought, that's frustrating. We're probably going to need a set piece here and, well, an own goal or something, which I guess we didn't get in the end. But it was still good to see us being a bit more dangerous going forward. I feel we've got a great situation coming in January where we're going to have Kulusevski coming back. So I feel like today was a classic example of a game where you needed someone who's quite physical, but also reasonably technical on that pitch. I don't think pace was our issue today. I think he would have been ideal for today. And someone who can, offer a bit of rotation in that 10 position. Because I know a lot of people in comments saying, got to start Xavi. Look at the difference he makes when he comes on. But it's all hindsight, isn't it? It's like, well, he's played 2 games in a row already. If you play him a third and he comes up with a bad hamstring in 45 minutes, everyone's going to go, what were we doing?
Yep.
We don't have Maddison fit, so we've got no cover. And the other thing we don't have, which all these coaches have, is they have the most finite amounts of detail on how fit every single one of these players is. For all we know, he was told by his medical department, this player has X amount of minutes in them if you want to be safe. And he's gone, all right, I'm sticking with that. Of course, there's another world in which they said he's fit for 90 and he went, no, I want to give Odegaard a chance. We don't know. So pick your battle depending on who you want to, think was right in that situation. But yeah, it was really good to see us looking good going forward. Like we mentioned, I'm sure we'll get on to Richie, but I feel a little bit for him because he's not necessarily starting every week through choice. It's also through circumstance. I think they'd have rotated between him and Solanke if we had both and Muani, and we've obviously don't have them available for today. So all we can ask is him to keep running through brick walls, causing chaos and doing what he does well. And Richie will always wear his heart on his sleeve and run his socks off in a game. That's all we can really ask, isn't it? So, yeah.
Yeah. I know we keep going back to that point that I think this game really sums up the resilience that we showed under pressure, the great character to come from behind. There weren't too many occasions where you could say we did that last season. I thought, again, what was a great point for our away fans, our amazing away fans who were in the ground that full time. it would have underlined the growing bond between Frank and the fans, where he went around to the away fans, gave them a lot of applause, gave them a lot of love, and that relationship is slowly starting to build between Frank and the away supporters. And it's hard because we have had so many managers over this last kind of 3, 4, 5 years that, I mean, really, us fans have not had a chance to get used to having that one. I mean, I go back to that kind of relationship that we formed with Pochettino over so many years ago, where we had such a bond with Pochettino. Maybe some would disagree. I think we did. I think, definitely, that last season at White Hart Lane, in terms of going into the stadium, the transition also from Wembley and to MK Dons when we played as well, people forget. There was such a love for Pochettino there that it just feels with Frank, and maybe listen, I can't speak for everyone if I'm speaking out of turn, and please do let me know, but it feels very early on that there's a relationship definitely forming between Frank and the Spurs fans, and a respect there that it just feels at the moment that we have got somebody that, number one, I think this is really key, is acknowledging he doesn't have all the answers right now. And he's made that very clear in his last few weeks that there's been a real focus and emphasis on the fact of getting a resilient defence, ensuring that we don't concede as many goals as we did last season. And also the element, I can see Miles is smiling there, and Miles can come back in if he wants on this point, that attacking emphasis will come. It is going to take some time. And I think, Miles, you said it rightly before we go for this first break. You said it, that he doesn't know his best 11 yet. He doesn't know the players well enough yet to know what his first team is. And the problem is, as we know, because the games are coming so thick and so fast, he's got to get the balance right, pretty much every 3 days now for a while. So how much do we take that into account? Again, I'll say this, it's the first game off the back of a European fixture. Yes, it was home, not away. But there's a lot of things there to have to weigh up and tally up. Again, you're missing 4 or 5 players already at this stage, Miles.
Kind of a bit early, yeah. A little bit early with he's already. How many games are we in? Look, the reason why I'm saying that is because I remember how we all were under Ange after the first 10 games, and we all thought, "Here we go, we're loving it, this, that, and the other." Let's just see when we get.
Do you think we? I keep joking about sadness. Do we just need to get over match week 10 against Chelsea before we get too excited?
I'll tell you what it is.
We want to create. Listen, I think we want to love. We just want to love someone, Miles.
Yeah, with Levy going and everything that happened with Ange and then the whole Europa League trophy and everything like that, Frank has probably come in at the right time, and we've had one really terrible performance where we lost. The other games have not been great, but we've got over the line. And Frank has got a character about him to go, actually, everything he comes out with in the press, you can kind of trust what he's saying, and he's not just telling us stuff for the sake of it.
I don't mean to be rude, though, when I say this. I don't think I'm being lied to.
Okay,
I mean that with all due respect. When I hear Frank speak, I actually believe what he's saying.
But as a fan base, we are quite damaged. We are quite damaged at the moment. And I think what it is that Frank is showing us all the signs that he's going to be someone that we eventually could fall in love with. However, you're going to get a point at some point during this season where it's all going to go wrong, where we're not playing well as a team, we're on a losing run, and games are not going to be going our way. And there'll be much, like how Tuesday was, where the performance was really terrible in the sense of, and there's going to be a period that we're going to go through that. And that's going to be the bit where us and Frank, are we going to be in it together or are we going to split? And that be the moment we know if Frank's going to be the real deal and long term at Spurs, which at the present moment he's showing all the signs that he will be. But I'm not going to jump straight in. My heart's been broken too many times with these managers, Rick. So I'm not where you are. However, I can understand why most people are. And Frank, I think we just need to let him breathe a little bit again before we start going, oh my God, we love you. You're going to save you. Let him breathe. Let him do what he's got to do. But no, look.
Sorry, Miles. I'm ready to love again. I'm ready to love.
I know you are. And I'm going to keep you firmly.
Everyone keeps joking around telling me I'm not seeing you this happy. It is early days.
And that's the thing. No, but that's the thing, because everyone is quite happy. And what we're seeing, I think because I think the biggest thing right now is because we're not playing well, still getting results. We're not used to that. And exactly. I think that, and we know at some point he's going to turn it around and he is going to get performances as well as winning games at the same time. So look, I'm not going to sit there and I'm sitting on the fence with this until, we're halfway through and we get to a point where I know this is the man, but he's doing everything for me right now to go, I can see where you're going with this. Yeah. Please keep doing it. And I think today, as I've said, he doesn't know his best team at the moment. Yeah. And hopefully, because the one thing that he said from the Bournemouth game is that he's learned from that. And I can clearly see in the last three games now, that I can see that he's learning, but I can also see at the same time he has got players missing in certain positions. And I think I agree completely with Vass. Simmons wasn't ready to start today. I got the decision. I just wasn't happy with the way he made that midfield free, because if he'd been learning from anything that he's seen, it wasn't a day for Bentancur and Paulinho together. They're more for the Manchester City games and the big games, not a day where Brighton were actually willing to give us the ball. And I think that was the biggest issue today for me, just the way he went in. But he learned from it. Like I said, he then made the subs. He then knew when to put who in each position. So he's doing all the right things. And I think a lot of people will eventually, and when I say a lot of people, when I fall in love, I think everyone will be in love as well.
On this point, Vass, very quickly, are we ahead of the project in your mind, or are we about where you thought we would be? What are we after 5 games in the Premier League? Obviously, we had that disappointing, Super Cup final, and obviously we had a fairly despondent performance in the Champions League, but we got the result, which I think many would say you'd be happy with the result. Performances will come. Where are in your mind, Vass, in terms of the project under Frank? Are we ahead, below, behind where we thought we would be?
No, I just think we're on track. I think we are where we thought we would be.
Okay, interesting.
There is an understanding, I think, that this team has gone through some change, and there's change behind the scenes as well. And Frank and his coaches have got to take all of that on board. We've strengthened, I believe, probably had one of our better windows for a long, long time. And he's trying to get the best out of everything in the early stages of the footballing season. And as I said earlier, no team's going to find their form straight away. It takes a little bit of time. And in that time, he's also trying to understand his players, what they're made of, what their capabilities are, what their weaknesses are. He's got to manage fitness. As Jim said earlier, we've already had a few injuries that puts us second in the injury list or whatever it is.
We're always topping that one most of the season, aren't we? That's one league we're always topping.
We get a trophy for it. But yeah, listen, mate, the signs are good, and Marlon's right to urge caution, because we did have those initial 10 games under Ange, and we all got swept away with it, including myself. Everybody did. We were all going, could we? And then the proverbial shit hit the fan. So let's see how it goes. But what I will say is today, that game, the way it went, I couldn't see us pulling that draw out with any of the prior 4 managers.
Interesting.
I just couldn't have seen that any of those guys doing that. We probably would have lost that game, maybe 3-0 in the end, as opposed to that. So I was really infused by the performance today. The way we kept the ball, we kept moving it, making spaces. I'm just encouraged at this point. Sorry, I'm dragging on.
No, listen, I think that's a really important point you make there, Vass, because again, we've had so many over the last 4 or 5 years. The fact that you didn't think any of them would achieve that at 2-0 down, given I think where we are, the ground we've gone to, the venue we've gone to, how tough it is, there's interest in. Jim, just at that point before we do go for our first break, are you where we expected Tottenham to be under Frank? Are we ahead of the curve? What's your thought in the point of now? We've got Carabao Cup coming in, of course, Champions League coming back as well. So things are really now starting to hot up in this next week or so for Tottenham. The season is really getting going now.
Yeah, my stance hasn't changed. I think there was my kind of bugbear around the transfer window kind of culture around all that was we came out of it and people were saying, not saying, and maybe no one on the stream was, or listening to the stream was one of those, but there was a lot of people saying like, this is the 8th best squad in the league. We haven't got the left winger we need. We failed in that window. And I came out thinking, I think we got the 5th best squad in the league. Arguably the 4th best squad, not the 4th best 11, but the 4th or 5th best squad. And I think it's shining through this season that when you've got 4 or 5 senior players out, you can still afford to leave someone like Ben Davies out the squad completely. So you got every week, basically, we can leave 5 senior players that would probably 3 of them have been starters last season out of the squad completely, because we've got the choice of not just rotating our first team, but rotating our bench. Like, I've never seen Tottenham behave that way. And that's what excites me about the platform. I'm excited by Frank because I think he's a good coach and I think he's a really genuine human being. He represents the ethos of what I want to represent Tottenham. I think he'll play football that's sensible but not boring, and we'll have games where we attack and games where we defend, and we'll be a versatile club. But what's exciting me more is we continue to build a good squad that will underpin the success of any coach. So let's just say it doesn't work out with Frank. I want Spurs to become the club, like the unmentionable club, let's say, who wear blue in London, who they can get away with sacking managers and winning trophies all the time because they always underpinned with really strong squads that set anyone who came up for a good. And it also other managers go, I want to manage that group of players because I can win stuff with them. And I think Frank's a far better coach than Maresca, by the way. And I think if you watched that Chelsea game today, you would have seen subs that were just absolutely baffling that I don't think Frank would have made. So yeah, I'm really excited by the squad, especially when we get. I really want to get Muani playing more. I think he's going to be someone that we didn't realise how much we needed him when he gets into some regular football. And I just pray this January we can get a left winger in. Suddenly you're seeing Simmons being able to start on that 10-10 role, even though he's a 10 starting on the left wing, which he's familiar with, and just having that extra option. I think there's a lot that we could achieve. So I think we're meeting my expectations so far, but my expectations are probably higher than most.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Jim, keep me smiling. I like that. Look, we are going to squeeze in our first break of the show for our listeners. Before we do, João Palhinha said to Sky after the game that we leave the stadium with the feel of sadness. In my opinion, we completely deserve to win the match. We showed from the first moment that is true. We suffered 2 goals away from home. We can take the fighting mentality from the result. It is not easy to get a draw, especially here after being 2 behind. But we leave with the feeling we could have had the victory. And I've got to say, look, it is so refreshing and so nice to hear the players on our team that come away from a game when they've come back into it at 2-2 and feel they should have won it. And I want that feeling to be really... hopefully propelled throughout the season, and we do, like I say, hopefully don't have to go behind to come back and win, but you need that resilience there. You need that fighting spirit if you are going to achieve great things this season. Hopefully, to help us achieve great things is going to be Thomas Frank. Let's hear from Tottenham Hotspur head coach Thomas Frank, who turned the game on its head and helped Spurs come back from 2-0 down at the Amex to get a 2-2. We're going for our first break. Let's hear from Thomas.
Thomas, thanks for joining us. Ended 2-2, came from 2-0 down. What were your thoughts on the performance?
I think the headline for me is mentality. I said to the players before the game, a game like this is pure mentality. Of course, we need all the tactical structure, details, all that. But to really want to achieve something, you need to be so strong here. When you go away after the back end of a Champions League game, that demands everything from you. And then we decided to really test ourselves by getting down 2-0. But just the way we started the game, wow. Coming away from home against Brighton, good team, and we just completely dominating them. And then out of nowhere, boom, they scored a goal where we can do a bit better, but also credit to them, and it's like this margin of sight. Then I actually think we keep going. And then out of nowhere, they scored the second one where, of course, I said before, Vic need to do better, but it's been so good for us. It can happen, so we know that. A good finish. But the way we just kept going and actually control that game more or less from start to end. Getting the 2 goals, that I think is very impressive. So the mentality and the physicality of this team looks strong, intense. I thought that was us.
Sometimes stats can tell a little bit of a story, and one stat I'll throw at you is we had 44 touches in their box to their 17.
44, yeah. But I think that's a fantastic stat, and I don't even know the crossing stat was the same, so you can just see we were up there. And sometimes in a game like this, you score 4 goals because 2 of the cross just a little bit better, or we just run a little bit more clever, or a little bit more determined, or whatever it is. Today we didn't get the benefit of it, but I'm a big believer if you're consistent in our messages, if you keep doing the right thing, some games will just be fantastic. But I think overall, actually it's maybe the best game so far in the season.
Yeah, and someone actually messaged me just before Richie scored, and I actually replied, I said, I can't believe we're not winning, let alone 2-0 down. So, but to come from 2-0 down, to get that point, keeps the momentum going, Thomas, doesn't it?
Yeah, I agree, and I think I can't remember all the interviews, but last year we were here and we lost 3-2 after 2-0 up. Now it's the other way around. We 2-0 down and get 2-2 in a very difficult place. Away game after the European. I think it just shows a lot about this group of players. I would have loved to win. Sometimes you need to take a good point and then move on.
Just before I let you go, a couple of players who weren't involved today, Ben and Randall. Any information on them?
Kudus got a dead leg. Unfortunately, I kept him out of this. He actually been struggling with the last week. but it was just too much now. Hopefully available for Wednesday. Ben got a slight twist to the knee. Shouldn't be anything serious. Also hopefully available for Wednesday.
So you go, that was Thomas Frank on the back of Spurs. I have a 2-2 up, of course, at the Amex. I'm joined by, on this show, Marlon over at the Spurs Kings. I'm joined by Vass over at Doctor Tottenham. I'm joined by Jim over at Oso Spurs. If you guys can please like and subscribe to all these wonderful gentlemen shows. They are regular on the Spurs beat. You can catch them all, of course, on their audio respective networks as well. Obviously, it's a intercontinental Tottenham pod crossover. We're having to really expand and use the squad wisely. We have got 55 to 60 games coming. We can't afford to have Jim, Vass, or Marlon respectively pulling a hammy because we have got a huge amount of games to deal with here on this season. Vass, don't look so scared about pulling a hammy. You will recover. Don't you worry. Thomas Frank actually said in that. Go on, Vass. What do you want to come in and tell me there?
Sorry, me running will be a sight for anybody really at the moment, let alone pull a hammy.
Never say never. Look, in terms of for Tottenham, Frank made that point in that post-match press conference there. His favourite performance of the season, this campaign for Spurs, given the nature of the way we did fight back from 2-0. And I think we've heard that a lot from respective players. We're going to hear from Destiny Udogie shortly as well, who also suggest that as well. That very, very happy with that. Frank already gave a mention to it in terms of Spurs' lineup for this one. We had to make 3 changes for the team, or say 3. He chose to make 3 changes. We went back. We changed the back four for the first time this season with Destiny Udogie, who had just recovered from a knee injury, instead of Jed Spence. Now we've got a full 3 days recovery between obviously the Tuesday night of the Champions League to this game. And of course, then we've got Doncaster on Wednesday night in the Carabao Cup. Now, João Palhinha came back into the starting lineup alongside Rodrigo Bentancur. Pat Matassar dropped to the bench while Lucas Bergvall, obviously on the back of enjoying really back-to-back player of the match displays, remained in the team. As we mentioned, Destiny Udogie getting his first start of the season, as did Wilson Odebear on the left-hand side. We remain without Dominic Solanke. No time from us yet for Solanke as to when he'll be back in a Tottenham shirt, although he returned to being back on the grass last week following an ankle problem. No Colin Moani, as Frank said there. He missed out with a dead leg. Or Ben Davies on the bench with Dane Scarlett among the subs. So Tottenham's team red up at the Amex. They had, of course, in goal Vicario. And then, of course, they had, you have to give me now, the club have changed their kind of number lineup now. So we're having the numbers formed down the left-hand side and then the players' names to the right, which is really confusing things. So you've got a team of Palhinha, Richarlison, Udogie, Bergvall, Romero, Kudus, Porro, Odebear, Bentancur, Van der Ven, subs of Kinski, Dainto, Javi, Tell, Gray, Johnson, Spencer, Scarlett. As we mentioned there, Rano Kunrani missing out of a dead leg. Just everybody knows out there, how's your luck, Tottenham? And welcome to Tottenham for those that aren't aware about Rano Kunrani. He's missed just 1 game through injury in his senior career before this game, according that's just transfer market. Hopefully it is another couple of years to the next one, because only Tottenham, Vass, being the doctor of the show, how does that happen? He turns up here, he's had a dead leg, he's missed the game, but he's had an injury for the last couple of years. Is it only Tottenham?
I don't know. Maybe we train too hard. I don't understand it. Funny thing was, though, Frank said he's been bothering him for about a week, and yet he came on on Tuesday, was it, against Villarreal? So that's a weird one, but maybe he just couldn't carry on today. I'm hoping he'll be okay by Wednesday and he gets maybe a 75 minutes against Doncaster or something.
Yeah. Are we just very quickly we've got to move on quickly, but we worried about Solanke? Jim is bringing you in there. You said earlier about players' availability. Is it a worry, Solanke, the fact that he's back on the grass, still not ready, won't be fit for Doncaster? We're going to come on to Richarlison shortly. Is that a concern for you?
It's not a concern, because I think the timing of the next international break is just sensible for Spurs to say, look, if Miani coming back very soon, by the sounds of it, we've got enough to get through to that period. Give you just a couple more weeks just to make sure you're completely, over that injury and you're back fresh. I wouldn't rush him. He's had a couple of injuries since he's joined us, hasn't he? After a pretty injury-free track record at Bournemouth. And I think that was partly just down to having him playing on fumes constantly. We, didn't have Richarlison available for large parts of last season. And it was just down to him basically to man the whole front line every 3 days for months on end. And body's just going to need a rest. So, yeah, I don't think it's a massive concern. It's just, again, I think it's not a concern because we've finally got some options. But yeah, if you were to lose Richarlison to injury tomorrow, then yeah, it's suddenly getting a bit like, oh, we're really down to one striker again. But right now, we're not in a position to be too concerned about that. Yeah, the dead leg thing, whenever I hear dead leg, I just think of being at school. And like my mate next to me just clenching a fist,
giving you a granddad,
smashing me in the leg and being like, dead leg, and then me doing it to the person next to me and just going around the classroom. I didn't know it was like a official injury, so I'm interested to know how you get those.
We learn something every day. That is official now. The old granddad dead leg is there. Yeah. It's official. And he was out and missing the game from it. Miles, you're going to tell me, like we said in the green room there, it was the wrong lineup again, according to you. Third podcast on the road, you're telling me, why was it the wrong lineup? Or maybe it was the right lineup because we had to make changes to get back into the game, Miles. Why was it wrong? Tell us why the lineup was wrong.
It's that midfield. That midfield still ain't, because he goes with Bentancur, and he said he learned from the Bournemouth game. And when you've watched him and Paulinho play, you knew we were going to be a lot on the ball today. Especially if anyone has watched Brighton this season, we were going to be on a lot on the ball, and we just wasn't moving it quick enough. And I think Bergvall struggled being more further forward out of three as well today. I think when he came back after, I think it was Bentancur that was subbed, he suddenly grew into the game a little bit more. So, but looking at the bench, I don't know where else he could have gone, to be honest, because Sarr's been played every minute. Xavi obviously played most minutes this week, and he hasn't had a pre-season properly. So it was just one of them. But I felt like we suffered a little bit in that first 30 minutes, and they did struggle. Hence the reason why we conceded the second. But for me, I think we need to start having a conversation about Vicario. I think that needs to start happening soon.
Yeah,
go on.
I promise you, we're gonna come on to him during the show for the second goal. But yeah, I agree. I said this obviously in one of the WhatsApp groups that it's not the time right now when that second one went in, but I thought at some point we are going to need to have a conversation on Vicario. And it's actually interesting that Frank, for those that watch the post-match presser, which is now available on our YouTube channel, Frank does mention the fact that Vic does take ownership of that second goal. So we are going to come on to that. He said he was at fault for it. And I don't mean it's disrespectfully last season. I don't think Ange actually ever admitted the fault for.
But it's not the second goal wasn't like, I get it, and he should have saved it. But it's that commanding of his box. He's not, and I think that's what's really letting him down, because it puts the defense under pressure. And for me, if they said to me next season, actually, we're going to look to upgrade the goalkeeper, I would probably go ahead with and say, yes, if we're going to go to a standard, and for me, I'm going by the standard of Lloris was the last goalkeeper that we had, and he was at a level. And Vicario, when you look at their peak, Vicario is nowhere near that. And if you look at some of the decent goalkeepers in the Premier League as well, I think it's very key, if we want to be going up that table, that he might need to be upgraded on. Is Kingsley the answer? I don't know. Not at this present moment, he's not the answer. But we as a fan base, I know everyone will go, but look, against Bournemouth, he saved us in that game. However, he also put us under a lot of pressure in that game with what he does, and that's the bit that I'm starting to have. And when he starts making mistakes like he does today, he does need to be made accountable for these now, because if Kingsley is going to be the guy that they're thinking is going to be the long-term replacement, they need to start having that battle now for that number one shirt.
Well, you brought him up, so let's cover it now. I mean, you've gone to him, so let's cover it now. I mean, I think he would have felt, Vass, coming over to you, he could have done better perhaps with both goals. I mean, look, my issue with Vicario is, I think one of the things that Marlon says there, it's the commanding of the box for me. And the fact is that I just don't feel assured that he has got that presence where he can dominate that 6-yard box. And I think, look, people had issues with Lloris in terms of his distribution, his kicking, but I never felt there being an issue around his commandment of the 6-yard box. Do you feel, with regards to Vicario, Vass? We know, again, the second goal is one they're going to be highlighting really as a issue in relation to the goalkeeper. Is that a concern for you, Vicario, in general, for Spurs? Will he take us to the next level?
I think people's opinions on goalkeepers seem to be formed at an early point, and then there's no movement off of that. I get that Vicario had issues commanding his box in his early time at Spurs, I don't think those issues are as prevalent as they were. I saw him on a couple of occasions come out and claim the ball today. And then you mentioned Lloris. I mean, Lloris used to come out, punch everything, then he used to come out, sweep everything. And then later on in his career, he wouldn't budge off his line. So he wouldn't even command his box, as you say, Ricky. So we've got to be careful about how we pigeonhole these goalkeepers by opinions that have already formed on either an old sample size or a limited sample size. I thought Vicario was at fault for that second shot today. I think the commentator on the stream that I was watching said that the ball moved, and it may have done. Firstly, that shot shouldn't have got away. There should have been a defender closing that down. But then it's on Vicario. He needs to save that. He should have saved that. With the first goal, again, somehow we were too high. They broke away. I thought it was an offside. I don't understand how all of a sudden these images that you're showing there of the semi-automated offside, suddenly arms are counting as playing people on or off or vice versa. Listen, Vicario isn't the greatest, perhaps. I'm not ready to bury him yet. I think he does some good things. His distribution may not be as good as Kinski's. That's a given, I think. But it's an upgrade on Lloris's. Lloris's distribution was terrible, right? And there's no doubt. He was a great goalkeeper, but he had no distribution at all. So we've got to be careful, like I said, about how we're forming opinions on these things. I think Vicario's commanding of the box has improved. Whether it's where it should be is a different debate altogether.
Yeah, I appreciate it's obviously a lot of other areas we've got to touch upon during the show, but only because Marlon did highlight it early on. I was going to bring it in the latter part of the show, but only feels right to bring it in now. Jim, on your take about this, I mean, I don't want to age you too much, but obviously you've seen quite a number of goalkeepers at Spurs down the years. We've had some interesting ones, it's fair to say. Where is Vicario in that list at the moment? Because, he's a fabulous shot stopper, I have to say, but I do have reservations over his commandment of the box being a massive, massive issue for me. And the fact that we're now, what are we into his third season at Spurs? And the fact I've still got those doubts there, that's a worry for me. I don't know if you feel the same on that, Jim.
Yeah, look, reputations are formed quickly and dissolved slowly. And once you've got a reputation, it comes back much more quickly than it would have if you hadn't had it in the first place. So you kind of, you do kind of make your own situation there, and you've got to kind of live with it, and it is what it is. And there's no denying in the first 18 months in particular, I think Vicario did struggle a lot with set pieces and didn't command his area as well as he could. But I also do want to defend him a little bit there. I feel like there was a period where we were all watching it as well and saying it's actually outrageous how opposition teams are getting away with just bum shoving him to such an extreme that it's blatant fouls, and even the referees are going, well, he needs to be stronger. It kind of felt like that. And we were going just incredulous to the point where the rules changed and he finally started to get a little bit more protection. And at that stage, he had, I think it was Gray and Davies starting in front of him most weeks. So he just didn't have that in the box. It's like, well, you're commanding an 18-year-old midfielder and a left back as your enforcers. It was a difficult situation for him to manage, which he could have managed better, is what I'd say. So it's kind of a mix of the two there. And I would say he did improve, and I did notice big improvements in his last 6 months of how he evolved as a keeper. And he really, good thing about Vicario is mentality-wise, he seems like one of those people who's obsessed with feedback and getting better. Yeah. So he has evolved, and he has gotten a bit better. I do think he could have been stronger on the goal today, and I do think that was partly his fault. But I also feel when a ball hits the side netting and it's hit that well, you've always got a chance of scoring. And Gareth Bale was brilliant at hitting the ball like that, those knuckleball shots. And I thought it was one of those that would have kind of caught out. It just kind of moves with the wind, doesn't it?
Yes.
Like, how did that kind of happen?
Yeah.
But I think, like, to kind of Marlon's point, like, he's to me, he's not the long-term solution. He was a solution to our immediate issue of Lloris, and I think Vass, you're spot on. Like, when you look at ranking him amongst the other goalkeepers, I think we look at Lloris with rose-tinted glasses. There were a few years that he was incredible, but there were reasons why a Real Madrid and a Liverpool never went for him. And he was always at Spurs. He had his issues, and it wasn't just distribution. There were a lot of times he would come for the ball and miss it as well. I remember his distribution, he would command with confidence, but he would often make mistakes. Paul Robinson, command of confidence, always make mistakes, but he could kick the ball the other end of the pitch. Gomez was like a really extreme version of Vicario, like way more extreme, where like he pulls off worldly saves, and then you have a bit of a clanger, coming up the next week. But I don't think he's anywhere near as erratic as Gomez. But I can't really think of any time I've ever seen Spurs with a keeper I've thought they're perfect.
They're 100% perfect. Yeah.
We've never really had that.
Yeah.
But in most of the positions, I think I've seen my perfect centre back. I've seen my perfect midfielder. I've seen my perfect winger. I've seen my perfect striker, but I've never seen Spurs have the perfect goalkeeper. Maybe they just don't exist. I don't know. But I think for now he's okay. But as we level up, if we want to move from being back in top 6, top 4 regulars to challenging for a title, you probably do need to improve on him. And you can't go into a season with him as your number 1 probably and get away with it if you're challenging for a title. But we're not there yet. So it's not an issue right now for me.
Yeah, that's fair. Obviously, Kinski will get his opportunity, you'd imagine, on Wednesday, of course, in that Carabao Cup game against Doncaster. So we will see him between the sticks, that's for sure. Look, the way Spurs started the game, they started very well against Brighton. They really did press on high in that opening period. There was a great little play to play in the beginning where Udogie raced through, Bergman ended a tap in. And it was a really, really bright start for Spurs, who obviously only conceded for only the second time in the Premier League. We've slightly covered it, so I won't go take too much time on it. But I was laughing with Jason the other week saying, this is the end of seeing, Spurs getting outdone by a high ball over the top. And quite literally, Spurs were done over the top by a high ball. And it obviously saw the way in which it's, come about was Minteh shrugged off Odebear off the ball for darting past the halfway line. Udogie Mickey Van Den caught far, far too high up, allowing Minteh to charge unchallenged towards the racing on Vicario, who was rounded by the player before slotting the ball into the net. As Vass said, we had the semi-automated decision go off in the background that told us it was a goal. I know many are probably saying, well, we thought we'd see the end of the high line, but obviously there wasn't an issue with regards to that high line there. Let's go to you on this point, Vass. When you're deploying that high line like that, is that always the risk you're going to get caught like that? Because it hasn't been the first season we've had to see Mickey Van Den Ven really sprinting back to life. But is that still going to be a thing we will see under Frank, despite obviously a lot of people mocking that during the Ange era?
It's going to happen, I guess, because if people want to play us this free-flowing attacking football, then, if you look at that screenshot that you're putting there right now, we've got 3 defenders on the halfway line to their 1 attacker, right? So really, we should be having that situation under control, or we've got to be intelligent enough to be able to step up a step or so just to catch the guy offside if we're going to take that sort of risk. But the bigger risk comes in the opponent's half. We shouldn't be losing the ball. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players around that Brighton player who's on the floor there, for those that are watching on video. The balls come from around there somewhere, and we shouldn't be losing possession there. So it's really hard to say that, you shouldn't have a high line, because there are going to be instances in any game where there will be a high line. The trick, I suppose, is not to get caught out. And in that instance, we did get caught out, and unfortunate not to play the guy offside. It was just one of those. And we should have done better. We didn't. But we've got to try and limit that eventuality, I suppose.
Yeah, what was quite interesting, I thought, is that it's almost classic. The referee blows up for a foul that clearly isn't at one end, then the other team go and score at the other. I know we're tired of also moaning about the officials, but it is like this modern day thing now where if you've got pressure behind you on the ball and then you throw yourself on the floor, you sometimes do get the foul. And it just felt with Spurs really that at times that's one of those things where, again, we seem to be at fault for that. But look, Spurs' main route to goal through an early period was Porro chipping the ball over the top for Kudus and Bergvall to chase on. They whipped the ball in the box, which was cleared. And to be fair to Frank, there was aggressive man marking early on that, had paid dividends in other fixtures but Brighton, and their defence was dragged out into wide gaps that we're hoping we were really going to expose. But Brighton nearly for a second time caught us on the counter. It was a good chance as well, really, where they nearly got in behind us again. But I think we saw in that opening period that we were really trying to get used to really the way the game was flowing to some degree. We started really, really well. I think the first goal, the way it came about, I think we were quite surprised by that. We conceded another couple of chances. And then, of course, in came the second goal, which is a disappointing one like we've touched upon. I think, we've all said it, and Frank has said it as well, that he would have expected Vicario to do better. Look, he said that in his post-match presser. The ball may have swerved, but the ball was still practically still in the middle of the goal. So, and I also have to say on this, Miles, I'm sure you will as well. We've given so much praise to Lucas Bergvall this season, and rightly so, because Bergvall has been tremendous for Spurs in a Spurs shirt under Frank. But there was a real defensive lapse there that, it's unforgivable, really, in the Premier League to make such a mistake. That, of course, did lead to the build-up to that second goal of the game, Miles.
Yeah, no, I was actually quite surprised that when Bergvall was in that position, the way he did try and play it back into play, but that he's going to learn that with age. You can see that he's coming along nicely and everything like that. But I was very surprised with the way what he did, and then the way we've just. But to be honest, I've still when the ball gets to, I can't remember who scored now, but when he does take a shot, it's not the greatest shot. It does take a slight move, but Vicario
Yasin Ayari, by the way, Yasin Ayari.
So between the two of them, you're going okay. But Bergvall, look, we've been completely given him so much praise in the last few games, but I just thought again today, because Bentancur was put in there, I felt that limited Bergvall a little bit today. Especially in that first half, I thought, again, I said earlier, he grew into the game later on. But look, for me, as long as his head weren't down and he weren't going on that for the rest of the game, which you talk about mentality, Bergvall's mentality is second to none. He always wants the ball. He's always trying to get on it. He's always trying to make a movement. He's always trying to open it up. And for me, he didn't let that get into his head. And he literally got on with the game, and he ended up getting better and better as the game went on. But I think today, again, I think he should have probably been rested as well, considering how much games he's played in the last week. But look, we are where we are.
Yep.
And for me right now, it's just a case of, look, we went 2-0 down. It happens, but the next 60 minutes is something that we can be proud of as a fan base.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's the thing. And we take the first half an hour and go, oh, okay, it's happened. But the fact is that we got to a point where we've actually got a point out of this game. Because after that first half an hour, I believe every Spurs fan went, here we go again.
you would be worrying. And also for the fact that, we've had to come from behind. We've not scored a huge amount of goals this season. Obviously, we've got a couple at City. We obviously got 3 against Burnley. We obviously scored during the week, but that would have been a worry of where are the goals coming from. On Bergvall, I thought, he's come off the back of, player of the matches in both the respective games. He was chasing the ball rather than really, let's say, dictating it in the early period. But, I thought it was better in the second half, definitely off the pace in the first half, but, made some good tackles and runs late on that game that maybe would not have been noticed. Let's come on to Spurs getting back into the game. Which I think this is going to be quite an interesting chat based on, I know what Vass might want to say on Richarlison. He did get Spurs a goal back, Richie. Somehow it was a goal-mouth scramble, wasn't it, really, to bring us back to 2-1. And we needed the goal because, let's be honest about it, like we said, going 2-0 down at the Amex, you don't want to go into half-time having a massive uphill to try and overcome. But Spurs did get themselves back into the game. Richarlison got it. It was his 3rd goal of the season. Kudus' shot hit the Brazilian, who is onside in the box. He slid and stroked the loose ball home. Like I said, goal-mouth scramble, but Tottenham won't care. It also came from Polina making a great tackle in the middle of the pitch and then Bentancur driving forward, which led to the goal. And look, we've been poor, but Richie, to be fair in that moment, kept the game alive. Vass, let me come over to you because I know you want to say a couple of things on Richarlison. Look, he battled away during the game, showed plenty of spirit with, very little end product of its fair. What do you want to say on Richie and where we're at with Richie in this project, in his own project?
Look, I'm happy he scored that goal. We desperately needed it to get in at half-time, only a goal behind as opposed to 2. It was pretty well worked and he was alert enough to convert it. I liked what I saw from Richie in the first couple of games this season. He looked like a different player, but he seems to be reverting to type now, and I'm a little bit concerned. I don't like the fact that he spends a lot of his time writhing around on the floor looking for free kicks. His first touch just isn't good enough at times. Makes his second touch more of a lunge, which doesn't always help the team. There's just stuff around Richie where it's not really working. He's playing with this constant scowl on his face, like he's always unhappy. When it's going for him, it's great. But the problem with Richie is that a lot of the times it isn't going for him. And, with the team around him, he needs to be a link player as well. And I don't really know that he does that very well. I get it. He's probably our second or third choice striker. But you do expect more from him. So yeah, I've never been his biggest fan, but like I said earlier this season, I was enthused with the new Richarlison that I was looking at, and those 2 goals he scored against Burnley, etc., etc. But yeah, he's just falling back into his old self now, I think, and that's a bit of a concern for me.
Do you agree, Jim, on that? Richarlison, is it a cause for concern? I mean, I think you said it yourself that he wouldn't normally be as high up in the pecking order as what he is, but injuries have forced him to be. Mawani may very well have started in front of him, Edward Solanke. So where are you on that debate as Vass brings it into play there, Jim?
He's the type of player that when I've watched other teams win titles, he's like their third choice option. And I'm like, how have you got a player? I know he's clearly not good enough to start for those teams. Be like, how have you got a player that would arguably be starting for a lot of sides in the top 8, just as someone you can have on the bench, like bumbling you over the line in games that you'd have no right to win? I kind of feel like he's one of those that I think is so valuable to have in and around the squad as an option. But yeah, I don't think he's what you want to be building your attack around. And I think it holds back a lot of what Frank is trying to do at the moment. What he's probably asking his players to do, he probably doesn't have the players to execute on it, because players like Richie, who are, and I feel really kind of bad having a go at him, because I think he's, if you look back at his story, by the way, someone was telling me who lives in Rio, and maybe someone who's listening is more familiar with Brazil and how football works coming up the youth ranks. But apparently a lot of these young players are kind of almost scouted by groups at a very young age, who then take the rights to parents' kids who are in desperate need. So they'll say, we'll buy your food, cover your costs of living, but we own a right to your son. And he was a part of that. And he had to go through a huge situation in his personal life over the last few years to get his own rights back, because he was losing most of the money he was earning, and he was trying to support his family and all these things. So he's been through a lot of adversity in and around the game as well. I think that's probably missed on us. We don't realize the battles he's going through. And he's always kind of just pushed through it. But yeah, just purely at a player level, you can't build a front line around him and expect to be competing with Liverpool or Man City, can you? Let's just be honest. But if you gave him to West Ham, they'd be like, oh, this guy's like ideal to get us out of this relegation scrap and get us back into the mid-table. That's kind of where I see his level as a player.
That's why Everton fans loved him so much, isn't it? I think he's that kind of player. Yes. Yeah. And somebody's put in the comments that they like Dane Scarlett. I'm actually a Dane Scarlett fan. I'd have liked to have seen him maybe come on for the last 10 or 15 minutes today, but there you go.
Yeah, you imagine Dane may get his opportunity in the week, of course, in the Carabao Cup game against Doncaster. Just Miles, very quickly, just on Richie, before we go for just squeezing our final break of the show. Richarlison, where are you, Miles, on it? Because, look, if Solanke's still going to be out for a little bit longer, and who knows how long this Mawani dead leg's going to keep him out. Like Jim said, it's a new one, dead leg. We'll have to see how long he'll recover and when he'll be back. Richie could still be in the starting lineup for us against Wolves next week. So where are we on Richie for you?
Look, he's all we've got left.
Is he, though? Because I know men are saying, could we maybe not play Johnson as a false nine? Is that not an option, Mars?
We don't have. We're not playing well enough to have Johnson as a false nine. If that makes sense, there needs to be certain types of situations where what we're all saying here is what's wrong with Richarlison. Johnson is not going to be the answer either. So we're in a catch-22 situation with the whole what we need to do. Like for me, I agree with Vass. I would have loved to have seen Dane Scarlett in the last 10 minutes today, because I remember when he came on against Ipswich and he was able to hold up the ball. He was laying it off. He was doing that bits, and that's just what we needed. We didn't need somebody to be in the box and doing what a normal striker does. We just needed somebody to be able to bring everyone else into play, and that's what they. You could, when Javi Simmons was playing it into Richarlison and the ball's coming off him, and you're like, oh, here we go again. And it is, and we've got to talk about the footballer here. Like Jim said, for a bottom six, for teams in around the bottom six, they'll love a Richarlison, but he shouldn't be starting at a club where we're aiming to be in the top six. And we just have to take that at the moment and take it with a pinch of salt. Look, he could have even gone left wing today, and we could have had Dane Scarlett up top, because we saw what he was like in Europa League last year, where he was causing an issue. And look, we're having trouble with the left side. But the present moment, for me, Richie does not look like a Brazilian type of player. You know what we're all used to as a Brazilian player? Richie's just not that guy. He's so the opposite.
Matt is laughing because that's what they were going to say. We've had a lot of Brazilians that were so-called Brazilians. I'm still getting over Gilberto in a Spurs shirt. About you guys. Are we sure Gilberto was Brazilian, Vass? Are we sure he was?
But I did check his passport, mate.
I read that. Weren't sure, was he?
If you look at today, you look at the last 3 games. I think it's the drop off from what we saw in the first 2 games from Richarlison, which is the worrying thing. He hasn't played very well.
Played very well in the Super Cup final, didn't he? But again, played very well against Burnley.
And he played very well against Burnley, and then we just kind of haven't seen it. And that's what Bassel said. We just haven't seen it since.
Yep.
And is it because he hasn't got no competition behind him, and he's thinking, "Oh, I'm going to play next week because Mwani's not completely match fit. Solanke's not going to be ready to after the international break, and Dane Scarlett's too young to even take my place." So is that the mentality that he's got at the moment? And what we'll see, as soon as Solanke starts making the bench, we'll see a different Richarlison, possibly.
Okay, interesting. Look, we're going to squeeze in our final break of the show for our listeners on audio. We are going into added time and Xavi Simmons time. Before we do, let's hear from another pivotal player in that game. I think many would say probably one of his games of the season so far in a Spurs show. We've got to come on to him. It was Destiny Udogie. Let's hear from Destiny Udogie as we go for our final break of this show.
Thanks for joining us, Destiny. First of all, what are your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I think we were a bit unlucky with the result, but at the same time, we take a good point away, so we have to look at the positives and keep building from next week.
I guess one of those positives is coming back from 2-0 down here at Brighton, which is, it's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Being 2-0 down in a away game against a good team is never easy, so it's a good point today, and we show a strong character.
Yeah, that character, do you feel that character could have taken us to a win in the end, because we dominated possession, didn't we?
Yeah, definitely. I think from the first minute we had a good start. Obviously we conceded 2 maybe poor goals and the game turned in a different way, but we showed a strong character to come back.
It's unlike us, isn't it, those 2 goals? Because, as I say, before today, 3 clean sheets in 4 in the Premier League, and we've looked tight at the back, haven't we? So, I guess learnings to take from that.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, we came here with a strong mind of keeping another clean sheet, but sometimes football doesn't go the way you want. But at the same time, we showed a strong, solid team, and we keep going.
First start for you as well. How do you feel?
Yeah, I feel good. I feel good after a while, just building my fitness back and getting back some minutes, and it feels good.
Yeah. You look strong out there, to be fair.
Yeah, I just try to help the team and give my best.
There you go. That was Destiny Udogie on the back of Spurs, rescuing a 2-2 up, of course, at the Amex as we go into added time and Xavi Simmons time on this show. It's Inter-Cross-Continental Tottenham Podcast. I'm joined by Jim over at Oso Spurs. I'm joined by Vass over at Doctor Tottenham. We always need a doctor on this show, given our injury record. I think we've still got 5 or 6 out. We've changed the whole medical staff. And we've changed the manager. And we've also not changed this man. Marlon from the Spurs Kings is back. Miles, we love you very much. And thank you also to the 4,500, 5,000 of you that are watching us live right now. We appreciate your support. Keep liking, keep subscribing to us. And, of course, all these wonderful gentlemen on their respective channels during this show. We are into added time. So, look, second half, the flip script, didn't it? As soon as Xavi Simmons, as we said, come onto the field. But just a word quickly on Destiny Udogie. I think we have to say probably Destiny's best display so far in a Spurs shirt, and probably the best player he was on the field for Tottenham. Don't forget, first start of the season for Destiny, defended very well, I think, in the early periods against Minteh, where, to be fair, he was causing Tottenham a lot of problems. He did so again in the second half. But to be fair, I think the key thing I can give Destiny is that I think Minteh's involvement seemed to really come to a more stagnated stage as the game went on. That was full credit to Destiny and the way Spurs defended. So well done to Destiny Udogie. Great to see him back in a Spurs shirt. And Frank admitted that as well in his post-match press conference, that he's got the compliment of having some really good fullback options. Of course, Jed Spence given a rest on this one. We'll see, of course, what he does do, of course, ahead of Doncaster to come in the cup. First 10 minutes of the second half, good reaction from Spurs. It was all Tottenham, really, although Dunk did try to lob Vicario from inside his own half. Kind of just shows you the nature of the Premier League and how nuts it can be at times. There was an early change for Brighton at the start of that second half with Diego Gomez replacing Carlos Baleba. Within seconds of that second half, Kudus was booked for fouling him. But really, Xavi coming off the bench, of course, did change the game. And to be fair to Xavi, he had a couple of moments in the early part of the second half where really you felt things were starting to come alive. Everything was really coming through him at the centre of the pitch. We had a great moment where Kudus had a great cross on the right. Bergvall dumbing it. Simmons let off a shot. Didn't make enough good contact. But to be fair, Spurs were building and were building. Johnson replaced Udogie. Driving run from Xavi ends with a ball to Richarlison. But his shot was comfortable for Bruggen. But then Spurs did make their breakthrough. We were banging on the door for that kind of last 20 minutes, half an hour. Tottenham did in the end break through that door, and it was courtesy of a own goal by Van Hecke as Spurs did level it up. Another good bit of play from Javi, and he picked out Kudus. His cross hit Van Hecke on the leg and bounced into the net. Spurs level, and there could have been arguments to say who was the more dominant team from there of trying to win it. But was it a feeling, Jim, of relief to get the 2-2, or a feeling of, hold on, we might be able to go on and win this game? What was your feeling when we did get that equaliser?
Yeah, I thought we had our tails up and had a shot of winning it. I didn't actually feel. Often with Spurs, I feel like maybe it's the whole like experience of actually winning a trophy in my lifetime now. But I felt confident that we were going to be the side that were going to cause the other set of fans a miserable evening. Not, here comes the inevitable. I know what happens next. I get my hopes up, and then someone just does something silly and we concede. So, yeah, maybe it's the trophy. I don't know, that made it different. But, yeah, I thought we were. And there were some little flashes where we could have pulled that result off. We could have, on another day, pulled off somehow a win in the end. Yeah, and it looked like it was going to be the Simmons show, didn't it? It just looked like he was going to just do something outrageous out of nothing. I don't want to get so carried away and say he's, that cameo proves he's the bread and butter of all footballers in the Premier League.
Well, I mean, so far, me and you described him like Van der Vaart, and Vass said Modric. So it's good to know we're not getting too carried away on the show, right?
Yeah, tell me about it. And we've probably can look back at other debuts.
Marlon's giving us I think you say, God, you guys never learn. You guys never learn.
Well, yeah, you got to be excited. What's the point? You go to bed, you listen to a podcast like this, you start dreaming, and then Spurs crush your dream.
And then you wake up on match day 10 and we got Chelsea.
That's about right. Yeah. We haven't got to the Chelsea implosion yet, have we?
No.
It always starts the same, doesn't it? It starts with the new season hope. Ali Gold tells us the players are impressed by the new training.
Yeah. Training's great.
Excited.
Yeah.
It's a familiar cycle by the sounds of it.
Yeah, but no, look, it's I didn't expect it. I did kind of, I hoped for it rather than expected it. And I had a good feeling about it. But look, I afterwards, for brief little bits, I was like, what a comeback, what a win. I was like, no, we didn't win, did we? We drew.
Yeah.
And I had to kind of remind myself a couple of times. So yeah.
Well, I think to some it may have felt like a win because it's been such a tough place to go and get results. And I think Marlon said it earlier, though he was laughing a minute ago. When we were 2-0 down, to come back to 2-2 and almost feel like we could go on and win it. I know there was like a late almost penalty shout for Xavi Simmons, which maybe Stills won't do it justice. In Stills, it maybe looks like it was a penalty, but I don't think you could really claim it as a penalty. He went down very, very easily there. But Miles, just a very quick shout if I can. Mohamed Kudus, his involvement in the game. Is it fair to say about Kudus that he is becoming quite a driving force for Spurs on that wing and really is giving us a lot of opportunities where people are getting excited about his involvement, Miles? Is that fair, Mohamed Kudus?
Yeah, but we kind of knew this already from pre-season and everything like that. I think what happened in the first half, I think the guy at left back for Brighton, I can't remember his name either, but he kind of, it was a 50-50 experience. Kudus beat him a couple of times, but he'd win a couple back. But he just seemed to completely die in the second half. And Kudus, every time he got the ball, literally would go past him, beat his man, and he was the most dangerous one of our players. And this is the issue that I'm gonna have with today's performance because he was allowed that amount of space. It just meant we looked better. But what happens when we go next week and then they completely mark him out the game? Are we going to be able to play any better? Are we going to be able to play better when we can't go through him? And hopefully that's why we're all looking at Javi at the number 10, because we can kind of have a second option. But as soon as as soon as Kudus was kind of left 1-on-1, and that's what we tried to do. We kept trying to leave him 1-on-1, and Porro would back him up. He was beating him. But that was a big reason to why I think everyone said we played better in the second half, because of he was our outlet, and we've said it from day one. As soon as Kudus came in from the friendlies, if Kudus is marked out of the game, we don't play well. As soon as you can get him in the game, we are playing well and we're on top. And I think that was he's in that second half was probably his best showing in the Spurs shirt so far this season. Okay. And then that's why everyone's now jumping on that bandwagon at the moment to go, that's why it was such a great performance in this today, because we look so much better going forward because of that scenario. So we just have to look at it and go, hopefully when he is being marked out, we just need to have another avenue and another route.
Great. I know we spoke a lot about Xavi Simmons, so I just want to talk about Destiny Udogie. Great to see Udogie back in the Spurs shirt. Probably Spurs' best player on the day. How important is Udogie for this squad? You know, a lot was spoken about Udogie in terms of what he would bring to Spurs. And I know, again, he's had an interesting first couple of seasons under, of course, Ange and now Frank. How excited are you to see Udogie grow, obviously under Thomas Frank? Because, again, sorry, I made a mistake there. Obviously under Ange, he was for a couple of seasons. Now under Frank. Are we expecting good things from Udogie this season? Are you expecting good things from Udogie?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've got a nice selection. Headache at left fullback. The good thing is Spence can play both sides, so he's like the joker in the pack and can give either Udogie or Porro some rotation. Listen, we know Udogie's quality. The problem he's had is injuries in his first couple of seasons, particularly last year. I think if this guy can stay fit, he's going to be crucial for us and the way that we play. So yeah, expecting good things. And if you don't mind, I'll just have a quick comment on Kudus as well. Please. To pick up from what Marlon said.
Yep.
I like Kudus. He's dangerous and he's strong, and he gets stronger as the game goes on, and that's probably why he started beating his left back on a more regular basis in the second half, because he lasts longer than his opponent does. Really, the opponents get tired. What I'd like to see from Kudus though is better decision making. I just need him to find that pass. I need him to get that assist. For the amount of times he gets past his opponent, I need him to pick somebody out or make the right decision. Sometimes he hangs on the ball a little bit too long, and I know some of the runs going outside him might be decoy runs or whatever, but sometimes those runs are on. So give the ball. It doesn't matter if you don't keep it and make something happen. Just give the ball, let somebody else make something happen. I think so. Kudus for me is exciting. He's dangerous. He's a little bit frustrating, but if he starts to click, then he's a really dangerous weapon that we've got in our squad.
Yeah. No, listen, I do agree on that point. I think the same will be safe for Odebear as well. I know some are frustrated by Odebear's appearance and he's called it a cameo, but I think we need to see more from our wingers, and I think it goes back to what the club were trying so hard in the summer to get to, let's come back into this point before we look for a close. Yeah.
Sorry, mate. On Odebear, I said to my mates at half time, I said, he just needs to be braver.
Yes, agreed.
And in the second half, he took on his defender a couple of times and he got past him and he looked really dangerous. I think he just needs to be encouraged to take his man on occasion, because he's just kind of set in this little bit of a situation. Maybe it's a lingering from last year where he just takes the safe option perhaps. But I think if this kid can be braver, we're going to see a much better player from him.
Okay. Well, look, Spurs did come from behind to rescue at the Amex 2-2. It feels everybody's quite happy where we are in the Frank project. We do know that things are going to accelerate in this next week. Carabao Cup action is on the agenda for Tottenham, then back in the Champions League and back in the Premier League. So it's fair to say things are starting to hot up. We'll see where Spurs are at. I want to say a massive thank you to this wonderful panel. Jim, thank you so much. Tell everybody what they can expect to see on Oh So Spurs. There's always great conversations over there with great coaches as well. Where can they find you? What can they expect? Tell the world. And we're going to see you back with us very, very soon as well, Jim.
Thanks. Yeah, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that kind of standard, all the main platforms. Yeah, we've got some episodes coming up with an A licensed coach to go through the standard debriefing of performances. We've got episodes coming up with 3 people who work in corporate finance, helping us go through the kind of new structure of the club and everything like that. And then we've got an international show as well we do for listeners who might be in different time zones that don't often get to be a part of, the day-to-day chat or have a different perspective. So yeah, hope to see you there. And thanks for having me on, Ricky.
You're a superstar. We love you very much. We'll see you back. So I know people think I operate in different time zones. Although I wasn't too bad, I think, in this one. Vass, always a pleasure. He is the doctor. There's always new servings of what the doctor's bringing up. Vass, what's on the couch? When are you going back on the couch? When are the boys going back on the couch?
We're broadcasting tomorrow evening. Unfortunately, it won't be on, but the team will be. We'll be looking over today's game and also looking back at Villarreal on Tuesday. So every week we are there. We're on YouTube, Spotify, all the places that Jim mentioned for his podcast. And I'm sure wherever you can find Last Word on Spurs, you can find our podcast too. So just jump in every now and again and give us a listen. We'll be grateful for it.
Bless you, Vass. You are always, I don't know why I say it's my guilty, but you're always one of my first listens to on a Monday morning en route down.
That's very
to
kind,
Essex.
Ricky.
So, Vass, you're a star. Make sure you get over there. And this is on the other end of the spectrum. Marlon and Spurs Kings, they go, I know Jim says there's an international show of Oso Spurs. Mars, they do actually go throughout the night. So Mars is always the perfect watch or listener at Spurs Kings because they're normally around the time that both my kids wake up around 2:30 of a morning when you can normally find you and Ash, Mars. Maybe you less so, more Ash, right?
Yeah, usually I'm half asleep on the stream and Ash is taking it over. But yeah, no, do you know what? I'm so glad that this Brighton game's over because every time you learn the Brighton team, they go and change it. So I'm thankful now. I can, by the time the end of the season, I'll learn all of it and all gone. But no, it's Spurs Kings TV. Look, we do a Monday show, which I think's the one I have to shout out to people. We do a VAR where we have a licensed referee, and I know a lot of people complain about the referees. I tell you now, the one thing that this show has taught me and taught all of us, most of us fans don't know the rules. And I think a lot of us, because I saw a lot of people today.
Apart from Vass obviously is a qualified former referee.
Well, I was a qualified referee, yeah.
So, but it's quite interesting.
I think you can still do a job now, Vass, but some of the standard we've seen in this bloody division.
And it's quite interesting. I saw a lot of people in the chat going how awful the referees was today, and I thought actually you weren't that bad. But it's quite interesting how fans, and even like on TV, where they say certain rules but don't realise. So it's quite interesting that. But obviously, me and Ash are back Tuesday. And then Wednesday, Ash has his rival show where he talks to the rivals about Tottenham and what they think of us, which is quite interesting. Quite funny, actually. But yeah.
Love that.
But I'm always on here.
You are, you're quite literally living with me here. He is. Miles, you're an absolute star. We're going to see you very, very soon. We've got a lot of games coming up. So we'll be seeing all these beautiful faces across the season. Please forgive me, guys, if I wasn't on top form. Man flu has had me. I'm going back into bed and crawling out in the morning for an episode of soft play with my 2 beautiful young children. That's going to be a lot of fun. I'm not sure you want to see me in soft play. That's quite an act you don't want to see. But from the wonderful Marlon at the Spurs Kings, from Jim over at Oso Spurs, from Vass from Doctor Tottenham. We don't need a doctor for this one. Spurs have come from behind. They've grabbed the point from the Amex and more from us all. Keep safe, keep well. And as always,